Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering the comparison between the MP5 for Cold War as well as Modern Warfare. What are some of their similarities and what are some of their differences? This is probably one of the #1 questions I've been asked about because obviously you get the extra 5 bullets, so there's trade-off there. Are there any other differences between these weapons? We're going to take a look at that today. If you're interested in me comparing another set of weapons from Cold War and Modern Warfare, the AK-47, the XM4 to the M4, or any other comparison, maybe a Bruin versus a Stoner, let me know down in the comments section so we can go ahead and start working on that right away if that's something you guys are interested in. If you do enjoy the video or learn something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Goal in today's video is 3,500 likes, so hopefully you can help crush that number. And if you're brand new or just haven't yet subscribed, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button with notifications on if you're looking to find your way back to the channel. We are getting very close to 500,000 subscribers, so hopefully we'll hit that milestone very soon. So a couple of things that we'll focus on initially is some of the head-to-head stats, and then I'll kind of talk about a best class setup for each, give you kind of an idea which one I think is better after we've gone through all of the stats. The format is going to be a little different, so let me know if you prefer this one over the other one that I normally do, so I can kind of take that feedback as well. So obviously with Warzone, the way it is a little bit tricky to test some things, but the things I was able to test is ADS speed. The Modern Warfare, if you have them fully decked out, is going to be a little bit faster. It has 236 millisecond ADS with the best class setup that I normally use, head-to-head versus the Cold War version, which is around 284. So it is a little bit on the slower end when it comes to Cold War, and the difference ends up being 48 milliseconds or approximately 20% slower, which is a huge knock in my opinion. Obviously, everyone, if you're going to be pre-aiming, then that doesn't really matter. But generally, when you get in a gunfight with an SMG, you get into it, and then you react by ADSing. You start with the hip fire a little bit, and then you ADS at the same time. 50 milliseconds is a huge difference, in my opinion, and that could be enough not to use it, but we'll get to more of the stats as we go on. Now, when we get to movement, they end up being fairly even. Modern Warfare is 4.86. Cold War 4.84, and the difference there is so negligible that you'll probably not even notice if you're running side by side by that person unless you're going a very long distance, and even then it'd be very minimal at best. Next one is another huge difference, ends up being the Strafe Speed when you're ADS. Obviously, when you want to get into a gunfight, you want to make yourself a little bit harder to target to hit. When you ADS and you strafe back and forth, you want to be a little bit harder to hit, and this is where the Modern Warfare wins again. 2.7 meters per second versus 2.4. Overall, it's a 13% difference. It's going to be 13% slower if you run the Cold War one. And the reason why these ones are having negative stats here is because in the long run, when we talk about damage and TTK, it starts to balance it out, which basically gives us two completely different feeling MP5s. Next up is reload speed. If you're going to go ahead and walk around with sleight of hand, it ends up being 1.8 seconds for the reload time on the standard Modern Warfare MP5. But if you're using a fast mag attachment like the 50 round that we'll probably be using in this class setup with the fast mag part of it, it's built in, it's kind of like a double attachment there. It ends up being 1.17 seconds, which is about 50% faster when we're looking at the comparison there. So Cold War ends up taking the edge on the reload because it already has the sleight of hand built in. Obviously the reload is a little bit buggy if you run completely out of ammo. It can kind of glitch a little bit, but that's something I think they'll get resolved. When it works appropriately, the ammo should be in the mag in approximately 1.17 seconds, which is incredibly fast for the MP5. As I mentioned earlier, it is a little bit difficult to get different various damage ranges, but I was able to pretty easily get damage values. And I tested this both for the standard MP5 within Cold War and then putting on the last barrel, which increases damage, bullet velocity, and it increases recoil at the same time, both vertical and horizontal. What I noticed is you weren't really getting any benefit to the damage, and it didn't look like it impacted recoil. So it looks like that attachment isn't doing very much. So I'd probably avoid that one in the long run because it doesn't look like it's doing what it says it does. So that's something that they're either going to fix or they're just going to change the variables there so it works a lot like some of the weapons that we're used to within Modern Warfare. It at least lines with it so we can understand what the attachment is doing. So overall, when it comes to Modern Warfare, we're going to focus on chest shots and head shots. When you're up close, that's within about 10 meters for both of these weapons, you end up with a chest value of 34 damage and 49 to the head, which equals 8 shots to the body, or if you're absolute aimbot god, it'll be 6 shots to the head. And that chest TTK ends up being 526, while the head TTK is 376, which would feel like you're deleting somebody if you hit all 6 headshots. When it comes to the Cold War version, the damage values are very, very similar. A little bit higher on the chest and a little bit lower on the headshot, we're ending up with 35 damage to the chest and 47 to the head. Still gives us the exact same shots to kill, 8 and 6, but since there has a little bit faster fire rate of 857 compared to the 798, you're going to end up with a little bit faster TTK for the same number of shots, and that's just kind of how it ends up working out. 490 versus the 526 and 350 versus the 376. And at the end of the day, this is like 2-frame difference in game. Not a huge difference. You're going to kill a little bit faster if you're hitting those shots. And here's where it kind of detours a little bit. And we've noticed this a little bit with the MAC-10, where once it has this damage drop off, it drops off, and then it has a long range before it drops off again. When it comes to the regular Modern Warfare MP5, the second damage value is 25 to the chest and 36 to the head, bringing the shots to kill up to 10 and 7 with a TTK of 677 and 451 respectively. And then when we're talking about Cold War, its next damage drop off goes from 35 down to 33. It only loses a little bit of damage, and the overall headshots is 43. So when we do that there, we still end up with the same number of shots to kill, which is 8 and 6 because of the values that they are. So you end up getting the 12 meter TTK or 10 meter TTK Modern Warfare pretty much carried all the way up to about 18 meters. And then it has another drop off, but you're typically not going to get any engagements on that range. So this is where they are drastically different. You're going to kill 2 bullets faster. You just aim for the chest. What does this end up meaning? It means that the TTK is going to be better with the Cold War version. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the recoil pattern, which is very interesting, and it's really hard to kind of like deal with when you first start using it, and it'll definitely throw you off. So this is a standard MP5 for Modern Warfare. You can see that the bullets kind of go up and to the left, but they're fairly tight grouping. They don't have a ton of vertical, and that's particularly important when we get to this next part. Obviously this recoil is very manageable when you're at close range, and if people are a little bit further, you got to adjust for it, but the side-to-side bounce can make it a little bit trickier. It just depends on your individual skill level. Then when we look at the Cold War version, you can see right here how the bullets go. I was 10 meters away from this wall, the same distance I was in the other one, and instead of the bullets going up and to the right, you can see they go straight vertical. On the left, these are the regular ones with a regular agency suppressor, the fully decked out class setup without using that last barrel using 30 round mag. Same thing on the right, but we are using that last barrel, and you can see not much is happening here. There might be slight variation where it curves, but in general, these recoil patterns are drastically different than the Modern Warfare version. These are typically recoil patterns that are very easy to control because they only go up. So all you got to worry about is pulling down. You don't have to worry about, okay, down and to the left, and then it's going to curve, and then just the other way, or with your mouse, like, you know, like doing some kind of puzzle on the wall. It doesn't make sense. So this is a drastically different recoil pattern, and I think for some, they're going to like this. These ones are a little bit harder to take sometimes people off the head glitches just because they go vertical. If you pull down too much, you know, it can be a little harder, but when it goes to a little bit to the side, then you don't need as much vertical. So it's all trade-offs. You got to get used to it. I know when I was using the weapon, in my muscle memory, I was wanting to do the other recoil pattern because I've been using the MP5 for basically 9 months to a year, so I'm very comfortable with that weapon. I could memorize that recoil pattern. This one, it is straight vertical, but in your head when you're using MP5, it is awkward as hell. So hopefully we see how that works out. I'm going to go over some class setups for you. So for the MP5, this is kind of standard class setup that I normally use, and this is what I use for comparison to side-by-side stats that we talked about a little bit earlier in the video. We have the monolithic integral suppressor, which in my opinion is the best suppressor based off all the testing. The 5 milliwatt laser, that's going to help with the hip fire accuracy. 45 round mag, the Merc foregrip, and then sleight of hand. Obviously, you can get a little bit slower reload, depends on what mode you're playing. Obviously, you're playing quads, you're going to want to be able to get into reloads as fast as possible and getting out of them as fast as possible. If you want a little bit faster mobility, you can always go for the collapsible stock. Keep in mind that you will have a little bit more recoil, but it's going to help you with the movement speed and aim down sight speed. Overall, the grip, you could always go with stippled grip. Doesn't really have as many penalties. It will mess up your recoil a little bit because stabilization kind of leads to a little bit more bounciness if you do not have it on your weapon, which is one of the other issues with Cold War weapons. But that's pretty much the class I would use in general. Is tried and true. There's plenty of different versions of class setups for this. There's not really bad ones, Well, there are bad ones, but there's a lot of good ones out there. So this is one that I like to use. So overall for this one, I actually go with the agency suppressor. They don't have a monolithic integral suppressor. I wish they did. You could go with the SOCOM eliminator if you want to get rid of some of that vertical recoil. Obviously horizontal recoil is not an issue, so you wouldn't really struggle by putting this one on. But a lot of times people are going to go with the agency suppressor because that is the monolithic suppressor for the Cold War weapons after that update they did. So that one's a good one, give you a little bit of range, suppression, and then you're going to get the bullet velocity. This is one of the biggest things in this game that a lot of the weapons struggle with from Cold War is just bullet velocity. Even though some have been buffed to kind of be a little bit more aligned with the Modern Warfare weapons, it's typically not enough, and this is the normal one you got to go with. Even if you're going to be dealing with close quarters engagements, the bullet registration will feel terrible if you don't have enough bullet velocity, which typically SMGs are on the lower end when you're coming from Cold War. So we got the Ranger one, that's just for the best bullet velocity possible. And then we got the Field Agent grip, that's going to help with some of the vertical recoil. Otherwise it would go a little bit higher. And if you are trying to shoot someone a little bit beyond the range that you'd like to with this weapon, maybe around 22, 24, 25 meters, you're definitely going to want a little bit more management on that. But if you didn't care about that, you could always put on like a patrol grip or something that and help you with sprinting movement speed. But personally, I feel that most of the weapons will need some kind of grip to counter it, so you get a little bit more consistency in your gunfights, especially since the weapons don't have stabilization. The salvo 50 round mag, it is going to hurt your aim down sight time. That's where I was saying it is pretty slow. They've kind of done the same thing that they did with the ISO, where you put on the heaviest mag, it will slow you down quite a bit. You could always just go with a 40 round drum mag. You're going to have slow reload time, but it'll probably be a little bit closer to what we're seeing with the MP5. So it's kind of one of those things, you're going to get burned regardless of what you do because of the way it works. You're going to get penalized on aim down sight speed. But personally, based off if you're going against multiple people, you're going to want 50 round mag. So you got to kind of pick what makes the most sense to you. The 40 round speed mag is probably ideal for most scenarios since it will be a little bit faster, but those extra 10 bullets could come in clutch. And then I go with the Serpent ramp. It's going to help you with the aim down sight speed. Airborne elastic is pretty good when it comes to Cold War, but in this game, you don't need to worry about aim while going prone, and flinch resistant really isn't all that important for this type of weapon. Normally you'd put flinch resistance on like a sniper rifle or something, right? So when you're using like the Kar 98 and somebody's shooting at you, you can line up that shot, minimal flinch, and you're able to take the player out. You don't really need it for an SMG, at least not in my opinion, for the engagements that you're going to be using this. Aiming while prone is already built into the Modern Warfare engine, so it's kind of a waste. So really you're kind of trading off aim down sight speed, a minimal difference. You might as well just go with this one. You lose a little bit of sprint to fire, but that is the class setup I would use. There's, again, more variations to this one. Plenty of good setups to go with, but you kind of got a basic foundation here depending on what you want to do. Obviously, the 40 round mag will be a little bit faster aim down sight to be a little bit more competitive. So now what's the conclusion? I think both weapons are actually pretty good. Obviously, the Mag 10 is the top dog currently, for several different reasons. It'll probably get a nerf down the road after people have skipped tiers to get the blueprint or whatever. They'll do something shady in the background on the blueprint side after people have grinded it out, and then we'll be back to an MP5 meta. Which MP5 will people go with? I think most people will stick with the older one just because it has a little bit better mobility, but the extra TTK advantage, a little bit more range, and that recoil of the Cold War version, I think puts it a little bit ahead. It's just a matter of getting used to it and training your muscle memory to think, hey, this is the way this weapon works. It doesn't work like that no more. We got to change it up. So let me know which way you guys leaning towards. If you enjoyed the video, learned something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, make sure you hit the red subscribe button with notifications on. Again, we're getting very close to 500,000 subscribers, so hopefully you guys can help me out with that. I do appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.